Hello, everyone. I'm Taranjeet Singh. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Innvocon Learning Solutions. So today with me, I have my friend Omkar Pimple joining me all the way from Berlin, Germany. Omkar is the co-founder and CEO of MyRecall.io, and he's building metaverse for experiential learning. And the company has its footprints has a strong foothold in India as well as in Germany. So, welcome, Omkar, and thanks a lot for the time. And I welcome you to our podcast, second episode of the Big Brains. So, we'll start with the what's the most exciting thing happening at Miracle, and how do you start your own venture?
Great. Thank you, Dharanjeet, for the kind introduction and for inviting me on the podcast. Before I jump into what we do at Miracle, I think, maybe an interesting tidbit like Dharanjeet and I, we also were on another podcast in 2021.
Right,
Um, in this, in that podcast, the roles were flipped. I was
exactly,
hosting, Dharanjeet was the guest, and today it's
exactly.
great to be here in another capacity, let's say, on the podcast and have a chat with Dharanjeet.
Right,
So, what we do at Miracle.io, so as Taranjeet has already you mentioned, I'm the founder CEO, and I've been in Germany for the last 8 years almost, and my background has been in the deepest ends of technology. So, as a systems engineer for mobile software, iOS, Android, as well as for AI systems. Since 2012-13, I've been in this space. So I've had the fortune to sort of see the evolution of AI over the last decade for the most part. And along the way, I've had the chance to see it across different sectors as well. And with Miracle, we saw that there is a lot of potential to be had for AI and emerging technologies, generally speaking, in education. It's a topic that personally is very close to my heart, and one of the challenges that I've seen after speaking to several students, teachers, parents, and so on, is that especially for a country like India, which has now the largest population in the world at 1.5 billion people, out of which almost 600 million people are below the age of 20. So that's student age for the most part. And the challenge here is natural, right? The challenge is of scale. And
absolutely,
the educational methods of today and the practical education methods of today don't necessarily scale so well. Textbooks scale very well, theoretical education scales extremely well, and that's why the challenge that we face today is that of, oh, मेरे बच्चे को सिर्फ theoretical knowledge, मेरे बच्चों को सिर्फ theoretical knowledge ही मिल रहा है, practical
absolutely.
knowledge नहीं मिल रहा है.
Right,
Practical hands-on knowledge कैसे दिया जाए मेरे students को, मेरे बच्चों को. So these are the burning questions, and they start right from the age of 10, 12 years old, when students are starting to make choices. कि मुझे बड़ा होके क्या बनना है, डॉक्टर बनना है, इंजीनियर बनना है, आर्टिस्ट बनना है, इन्फ्लुएंसर बनना है, टीचर बनना है, कुछ और बनना है. So this age group is something that is a very crucial one, is what we've seen. And we said कि ये age group में when a student goes to the school, there is one microscope, for example, for 200 students, even in very large and well-reputed schools. Let's not even get started about the public schools, which may be even in a more difficult situation. So in this situation, the student actually never gets a chance to explore and learn hands-on कि
right,
माइक्रोस्कोप कैसे यूज करना है, ये उनके टीचर उनको बताएंगे शायद, या फिर दे मे डू इट इन अ ग्रुप ऑफ 5 maybe 10 स्टूडेंट्स, उसमें से एक जो लीडिंग बच्चा है वो हैंडल करेगा बट करेगी, बट everyone else they're just observing. And instead of creating a curiosity in topics such as science and STEM, what is created is instead of fear कि यार this is off limit somehow for me, I'm not allowed to touch things because they're expensive, they're delicate, and so on. And we lose out on a very crucial opportunity to create more scientists and scientifically minded people,
exactly.
which is more and more important in today's generative AI world, right? We need people who can question it. We need people who can think critically and not take everything at face value. Otherwise, the consequences are disastrous. So that's the problem that we have set off to solve with Miracle.io. And Hamara approach, it's a very simple approach, right? We realize that labs, as many labs are required, don't exist in the real world. So we create them through mixed reality technology and mobile devices. कि आप आपके घर में आपके लिविंग रूम या बेडरूम या बैकयार्ड को आप एक साइंस लैब में कन्वर्ट कर सकते हैं. And Miracle very magically adds all the equipment, all the materials, all the tools that you need to understand and practice procedures, or to understand complex abstract concepts like how does sound travel in different kinds of media, or how does the human nervous system help you stay safe and actually react to the stimulus around you. These are things that are hard to understand and require a lot of imagination, but with Miracle you're able to learn about these things by doing them in the real world around you, instead of just sitting at your computer and clicking through a mouse. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Fantastic. So, just to add upon that, even that was a thought process that we started Invocon with. That you are currently catering to the K-12 or the school education system. So, while I was studying my engineering, while being in the third year, I realized that means the while we talk about the gap between what the academia delivers and what the industry demands, it's huge. And what I learned throughout the 3 years of my first 3 years of my engineering education, it was more of a theory part, more theoretical, rather than me becoming an engineer. I just became a graduate with a degree in Bachelor of Technology. So quite relatable, I guess. So moving ahead, Omkar, you have hired talent, you have built your team across Germany and in India as well. So, what's the core difference that you see with the talent or with the type of engineers, as we talk specifically, those based out in or have graduated out of colleges in Germany and those based out of India and have graduated out of the engineering institutes in India?
Right. It's a very good question, Taranjeet, because I think I've had again the opportunity to sort of see both sides, right? Because generally tendency in India is to think, अरे यार India में ही सब खराब है या problems है, बाहर सब बेहतर है, better है.
Right.
Now the truth is somewhere in the middle, I would say, right, between these two extremes. So while in Germany, for example, and outside of India, there are a lot of good things. There is an environment that is different. I wouldn't say it's better or worse necessarily. It's a bit of a different environment. It's still fairly academic and theoretical in many ways. But for example, in the German education system, they have something. Basically, there is a parallel track to the degree, which they called a practicum, essentially, which is a more hands-on. Um, it's a more hands-on program. There are educational and academic theoretical aspects to it, but like 20, maybe 30% of it is theoretical. 70, 80% is like hands-on practical. And essentially the equivalent of internships start already in the first year, second year. So you learn some theory and you start immediately applying that, what you've learned, in the real world in the form of in the being a working student, they call it here, or an internship or so on. So I think that is a very big difference. I don't see that happening so much in India. In India, the internships are reserved for almost the last year students, maybe,
Right.
or maybe third year students. I see that slowly changing, but I think like management, university management somehow find it still hard to sort of apply these changes. Perhaps some of these regulations come from our UGC guidelines, and maybe something can be moved over there. But this is one big difference that I see in the way education, especially higher education, is done differently in Germany and in India. At the same time, I see that in India there is because there are so many people in higher education. Um, for better or worse, there are people in engineering who want to be engineers. There are people in engineering because unke parents want them to be engineers.
Exactly.
Right. So the effect of that is that there are many, many engineers that graduate with the degree. Right. Now, as an employer, my challenge becomes कि यार इतने सारे लोगों में से how do I separate or filter out the best people? Going to, and in the past or until now, the way to do it was just to go to the premier institutions, IIT, NITs, and BITS, and all of these kind of organizations, because there is a higher probability of you finding a good fit
Exactly.
for that. But in today's world, like, why would I go to one college if I'm able to reach potentially all of the students in that sort of, all of the candidates, in the pool that I'm looking for on platforms like Indeed, LinkedIn, and all of these online job portals. So I feel like that has changed a bit over time. Like, going to a college still gives you perhaps the network, but it may not necessarily give you an edge necessarily over maybe a tier two, tier three college, because now that access has been democratized to some degree, I would say, to jobs and so on. I think mentality still is yet to be developed. You have shining stars also in tier four colleges, and you have high performing non-team players also from tier one, institutions. So I feel like in the end, the industry has to sort of keep their eyes open and can't just take the tag, shouldn't take the tag blindly. But because of this competition, essentially, like the survivor instinct in Indian students is way higher somehow. Like, it is, for better or worse, like, it's a very competitive, cutthroat environment. So everyone is trying to be at the top of their game, um, and that shows also in their work ethic, for example. So I think these two are big differences, like applicability of what you learn in the real world as early as possible. That's one major difference, I would say. And the second one is the survivor instinct. Like, the go-getter attitude I see is more strong. It's not that it's not there in, like, out here, but it's somehow more probable that you'll find it in a student or a recent graduate from India. And the third thing that I would say is a bit different here, than, let's say, in Indian university contexts, is it's more multicultural. Like, and in India, for example, it is multicultural often in the sense that you will find people from, let's say, Punjab, and you will find people from Chennai in the same college. So it's multicultural in that sense, and India is a huge country. In Germany, for example, Germany is a smaller country, but then India more or less can be compared to the entire EU of 28 countries. And each country can be compared to a state, almost. So it's a very rough generalization, but I think when you say multicultural, you see people from, let's say, the easternmost parts of Europe to southernmost, northernmost, all coming maybe to one university,
Right.
or maybe from the US, maybe from India, maybe from China, and so on. So I think that experience that you get, the beliefs that I hold and the things that I've learned, and the things that I believe in, may not be the absolute truth.
Exactly.
And getting to sort of experience that at the young age of, let's say, 19, 20, 21, I think can be a very big game changer. Maturity levels are different, I would say, in such an environment. So I think it's going to be hard for Indian universities to sort of create that environment. It's generally harder, these kind of things. But somehow, if you're able to create that, that would really change the game for, of course, the students who are going through the university, but also employers eventually. Because in the end, I would rather hire a well-rounded individual who has seen the world a bit more beyond, their village or their town or their hostel, because they've seen so many other perspectives. So yeah, these three, four things I would say are different, in India and in Germany.
Perfect. So just on the similar line, means like you're working with the schools, you have been, means you recently partnered with the government of Punjab in India as well. So upon that line, uh, do you feel that the school, the grooming, and the type of education that we have here in India, the school education, does it play a role in making the students while they go in for their higher education or maybe undergraduate degrees, to make them confident about means the what they are about to do with their in their professional career, and also as you mentioned, survival instincts, or the approach towards how they take the things in the real world. Does the school education altogether has a role to play in it?
Right. I think definitely school education has a big part to play there. Like I said, I think schools are nurturing students in very important parts of their lives, right? So a typical 13 to 15-year-old student, like, I don't know if you remember when you were 13, 15, but you had just started to get a bit more autonomy as a
Right.
teenager, right? Like you
Right.
start to be able to go out by yourself, spend time with your friends outside. You also start contributing to the economy, right? You
Right.
start, I don't know, going to cafes, restaurants, concerts. You start buying things more and more. Let's say games, consoles, ho gaya, hardware, computer hardware, cosmetics, deodorants, these kind of things. Like you start sort of, you have a hunger for experiencing life,
Exactly.
and you have that energy also to sort of go out and get it. Now, there may be certain constraints, like you may not have the right amount of pocket money and all of these things, but yeah, generally there is the hunger to sort of explore the world and sort of make sense of it and find your place in it. So I
Absolutely.
think schools, that's what they are, especially higher education, higher secondary, for example, right? Between, let's say, 8th standard to 12th standard, that age group. So schools play an important part over there because I think all that energy, if it's channeled in the right direction, um, right being a helpful direction, not just for the individual student, but for the school and for society, I think it can create wonders. And understandably, schools also face challenges. Like we've spoken to so many school principals on another podcast series that we did with school
Right.
principals, and it was a great eye opener for us as well. That school principals, school teachers, they face a lot of challenges of their own, and education is one of those few sectors where the service provider, in this case the educator or the teacher, is from a very different generation than the customer or the consumer, let's say, the
Right.
student. Typically, there will be a generation gap of at least two, maybe even 3 to 4 generations, and that effort needs to be made to be stay up to date more and more,
Exactly.
um, because things are changing very fast for the upcoming generations. So I think these are few things. Technology plays a part over there, but it's not a silver bullet. But I think from a philosophical angle, these are things that we need to think about as well. Like what is different in this generation that I, as a teacher or an educator, maybe don't relate to, but I need to step out of my bubble to really understand who I'm serving, essentially. And I think that can work wonders. And of course, it sounds great on paper. It's extremely hard to execute out there. We've seen very few schools actually doing this well. But I think this will be valuable in higher education. Of course, higher education gets a pool of students that are even more tuned with the real world and have channelized their energy in a valuable way. Employability naturally has higher chances of also increasing, and employers also find better and better talent in the talent acquisition funnels. So I think it has this sort of chain reaction. I think that starts in secondary school, I would say. Primary school, probably, but maybe it's a bit too early. But secondary school, definitely we see that this if we start this transformation there, it has long lasting effects along the entire journey of that individual, and also how they can find their space, whether as an entrepreneur or as an employee, a high performing employee, or doing something of their own, whatever that may be. We see that starting there can be very, very valuable. So schools do have an important part to play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. So very relatable. Again, coming back to the team and organizational development. So, means the entire tech industry, be it service based or be it the product based companies or the startups, means they have been suffering right after means the COVID norms were relaxed a bit, in terms of retaining the talent, specifically the tech talent. So, means did you find it difficult? Did you find it challenging to onboard or find the right talent within the specified budget? And to retain that talent, if yes, what were your strategies right before you went into the job market and got some early talents on board?
Right. Um, I think finding and retaining talent has been one of the biggest challenges that we've faced. Because in the end, I feel like a company is built by the people that it
Right.
has. Um, and maybe I'll start with why or how we decided to build the company. So when I started off in 2020, so I left my job, full-time job in 2020, and I said, okay, bahut ho gaya abhi, I want to start my own
Yeah.
company. That was it was a simple, innocent thought process, when I began. And when I started, I said, ठीक है यार मेरे को I had a lot of different companies that I worked at in India, in Germany. Spoke to a lot of different kinds of people, worked in different kinds of contexts and domains and everything else, right? From e-commerce to fashion to food tech, fintech, health tech. काफी कुछ चीजें देखने मिली, thankfully, by the grace of the universe. But of course, there was, कुछ हर एक कंपनी में कुछ ना कुछ something was missing, essentially. On a personal level, मेरे को लगा यार this is not right, यार this is not how it should be,
Exactly.
right? And I said कि मेरे को जब when I'm building my own company, I want to build a company that I never got. So that was the basic thought process that I started
Perfect.
off with.
Perfect.
So I think I would say, without trying to remove all the bias, founder of the company, I would say Miracle.io is building an employee first organization, and it has built. Over the last 3 years, we are very selective also for that reason. But over the last 3 years, some numbers perhaps may be also helpful. We are a 2.5, almost 3-year-old company now, across Germany and India, and our average tenure is 1.5 years
Fantastic.
for a 3-year-old company.
Fantastic.
So I think that says something. We're talking only about full timers, right? Like not interns and so on. Naturally, interns are by definition short-lived. Unka tenure hota hai. Some of them may convert to full time, but we're talking full-time tenures. So on average, it's been like almost 1.5 years. And our Glassdoor average rating is 4.7,
Fantastic.
for example. So these are two things, are not necessarily metrics that we are chasing, but these are very strong indicators about something happening right for such a young company. I think
Exactly.
having that basis in place sort of helps us a lot. And I would say we've chosen to do this because we know that finding talent is extremely hard.
Right.
So, like I said since the beginning, right, कि इतने सारे लोग हैं, इसमें से pick करना लोगों को is extremely time consuming for me and the company overall.
Right.
So once we find someone and once they are a good fit, how do we retain them in the best way possible and with everything that we can do in our power to do so? So retention has been something that we've been focusing on. Of course, despite your best efforts, people still have their lives to, move along with, and they make their choices. But for example, one of the things that we did was hire. Our hiring process for technology and product has been to start off with interns at the beginning, some of them. And then some of them are very, very gifted and they get to sort of experience best in class engineering practices that I have learned and we have now in place at Miracle. And that's how we're able to do all of these things like mixed reality and all of these things as a bootstrap company without external funding, because the technology foundation is in place. So all of these interns on the product and technology side, they get to experience these things. So, but that's one part. Skills is one part. But the other part, which is hard to find, is mindset.
Exactly.
And for me, skills is a function of mindset and time. If you have the right mindset and if you apply hard work and over enough time, you will get to a skill level, let's say. But there is no reverse relationship of that. Like you may have all the skill in the world, but if you have not the right mindset, let's say, to succeed in a team, then that skill is not going to save you.
Absolutely.
So these are 2-3 things that sort of we've observed. And from a retention standpoint, like there are some things that we have seen. In the end, like we discussed before, also health is one of those things that is a very crucial aspect. Like a healthy employee is a happy employee. A happy employee is a productive employee, and a team of productive employees is more likely to succeed in whatever they're chasing as a company, as a mission, as a vision. So it starts there. So for example, we have probably the only company in India at the moment that gives unlimited sick leave. We don't count sick leaves. So far, we've seen that one would think, "Arey yaar, misuse ho sakta hai iska." and हो सकता है, no questions over there.
No
So
questions.
far नहीं हुआ. And so far, actually, people are taking less sick leaves in total, and which means that they're actually healthier and
Right.
are staying healthier, is what we are seeing. That's just one example of sort of thinking a bit contrarian almost, and not putting unnecessary rules, regulations in place until we need to, let's say, have them, until there's this first case. So far, that first case has not happened because I think we are optimizing for mindset also.
Right.
So I think all of these things are connected to each other, and I feel people also feel more cared for when they hear about things like these. Another thing on health that we do, for example, is have. I mean, this is not so uncommon, but we have an health insurance policy for our team members, all of them. Early stage companies don't typically go in that direction yet, unfunded early stage companies. But we said that because health is one of our core priorities for our team members, we want to have these things in place. We're a fully remote company as well. Like you can work from Berlin, you can work from Portugal, you can work from Goa, you can work from Maldives, you can work from Manali, wherever you want, as long as you have your computer and an internet connectivity, and as long as you're shipping your stuff on time, it's fine. And that's also something that is very attractive for our team members, and they're able to remain healthy because of that, because they don't have to travel 2 hours 3 hours a day in traffic. They get more time with their families, friends, their own selves, their own health, and all of these things. We see that that has worked well for us, and because we didn't have the baggage of the past of being in office. We started as a remote company in 2020. So we said, this is the new reality. Let's embrace it and make the best of it. And I think we found a good way to sort of somehow magically make it all come together and work. And it was like, yeah, there was no book for it, right? It was all intuitive, like sort of try some things, see how they're doing, speak to your people, see what they think, and sort of build this culture of transparency as well. Like, the intern can give feedback to the CEO, as the CEO can give feedback to the intern about some things that they're doing well or some things that they would like to maybe see differently, or whatever that is. So I don't know. These are just a few things off the top of my mind that I think help us to sort of have a good employee first culture, and yeah, help happiness and therefore retention, and sort of go from there.
Absolutely. So just to add upon that, means while we started off Invocon, there are some members of the team that have been with us since, means we started off hiring a permanent, means adding to a permanent team just 2.5 years back. And there are members who have been with the team right since inception, means right when we started off the full-time recruitment. So the agenda, or the, we can say, or the objective of doing the recruitment right was that we are gonna make, or we are gonna place a fundamentals very strong. And it's not just about explaining the product to the incoming employers, or while interviewing we just gonna explain what are the recruitment policies, what are the HR policies, or what does the company does, how big is the scale, but to actually help the incoming employee with what the company stands for, what is the vision of the company. Because actually being a startup, we as an entrepreneurs, we just can't stand ki nahi aa pao and leave within 3 months, then we'll have to hire someone again, right? If you're staying with us, just take the authority, take the complete responsibility, go ahead, work with the team. Because the first thing during the orientation call that I say to the incoming employees or the team members is that you are not working for Invocon, you are working with Invocon. So I guess that mindset or that fundamentals, they create a difference about what from an employee's perspective, what they think about the company, what they think about you as the leaders or the founders, and they have that instinct that you as the entrepreneur, you as the leader of the company, you have their back no matter the situation. So a very on point answer, Omkar. So in the similar line, just wanted to ask, means your organization is a multi-country multinational organization now, right? You have been operating in Germany, you have been operating in India for a while now, and you have worked with multiple companies across the countries. So what do you see means the current meltdown in the economic meltdown across the countries? The Eurozone is currently in recession. India, fortunately, has a steady growth right now. The United States is currently in recession. So, with generative AI, ChatGPT, and AI being a buzzword now, uh, in a state at a time, at a moment when the global economy is in a turmoil. So, how can you relate it, or in the context to the job market, maybe 6 months or 1 years down the line? Will AI help somehow get the job market on track? Will the recruitments they means will they get to a level while they were at the post-COVID level, or what's your take on that?
I think it's very difficult to say, right? I think over the last 3 years, all 5 year plans went out of the window
Right.
because nobody, everything that everyone had predicted may happen actually didn't end up happening.
Exactly.
I think nobody has this crystal ball anymore. I think nobody had it to begin with, actually. But you know, abhi everyone knows ki your guess is as good as mine, I would say. But here's what I see. I see that definitely AI has been a buzzword in the last year, more or less. I mean, I've been on the AI side for the last 10 years myself, as a practitioner as well as a researcher. I have been an academic researcher as a hobbyist on the side. I have a couple of papers published at the intersection of learning science, like learning psychology, AI, and immersive technology. And a couple of these pieces are published in Springer Journal of Information and Education Technologies and International Journal of Machine Learning and Computing, and so on. So I've been sort of following and building in the AI space for the last 10 years on this side as a hobby, and now full time, of course. So I've always believed in the potential of AI to change how we interact with computers and the world around us. Now, with generative AI, I think many people think, यार ये AI की वजह से मेरा job जाएगा, because now everything has become so easy to do and create and everything else. Now, that is partly true, I would say, that it will affect jobs and maybe the number of jobs and the kind of jobs and everything else. But I think the reason the human civilization and the human species is so special from all other animals is because of our adaptability.
Right.
Adaptability is like the key trait that separates us from other animals. The human brain and everything else is all contributing to adaptability. And Darwin's theory of evolution also states essentially the most adaptable are the ones who win, right? So I think it's a great opportunity to adapt in that sense as well. That maybe you've been in a job for 10 years and you're also bored of that job. Maybe it's a good opportunity for you to sort of think, "Yeah, okay, let's try something new." And it may not be as easy as it was maybe 10 years ago when you were 18, 20, whatever. So for people in, let's say, that phase of life, people who are, let's say, between their 30s and 40s, and let's say have spent around about 8, 10 years on one role or one profile, it's a good opportunity to sort of start thinking a bit wider. Maybe your job is not affected so much, or so you think. But right today, right, everything from writing code to writing articles to photography to graphics, graphic creation, video editing, all of these things are being done, partly at least, by AI.
Right.
So it will affect everyone. And now the question is, are you able to turn that effect into a positive effect for you and your professional growth? I think that's how I see it. I see that definitely there are certain roles that are and will be affected more, like content creation. I see, for example, blog, like article writing, SEO, all of these sort of roles. I see that they will be affected more significantly, let's say, than programming, software engineering, these kind of things. AI is able to do a reasonable job out of code as well. But I think in the end, it's a good starting point, and you still have to work on it and sort of build the architecture correctly and everything else. At the same time, we at Miracle.io, we use generative AI of course, the ones that are available out there, plus a few tools that we have constructed extensively across our entire organization, not just in technology and content, but also on business development, sales, fundraising, legal, everywhere. In fact, we for higher education, maybe might be interesting to some of your audience. We run an AI for academia. It's a faculty development program for higher education, where we actually help faculty members save time and effort on their day-to-day chores, which otherwise
Right.
take a lot of time, effort, and patience from their side. So they're able to spend more time on more valuable things like research, mentoring students, and these kind of things. So we've reached a point where we are able to sort of also enable other organizations to use AI in their day-to-day. And I think it will like it's hard to say what kind of new jobs will be created. I'll give you an example. So our core product is geared towards the younger audience, like I said, like teenagers. So we have a we have an ambassador program essentially. So these are the most brightest students that we interact regularly with, and some of them are just incredibly just smart and so creative about these things. So I know one student. This student is, I think, maybe 12 or 13, like very very young. Um, and this student has built a business partly using AI. I'm not sure to what level generative AI helped him set it up, but right from generating. So the business is about t-shirt AI art printed on t-shirts. Simple business, but beautiful AI art is generated by AI. Pricing model and channels and all of these things are also supported, for this student by AI. The AI is the co-pilot essentially. And this kid actually has a business that he's running now.
Fantastic.
12, 13-year-old kid.
At least he had that mindset that how to use and where to use the AI potential.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So
So
just
that was something that was mind blowing to me. I'm like, this is what AI can do. It will change your job. It will not take it, but it depends on what you do with it.
right.
Whether you adopt it. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. So just a question clicked my mind. It's somewhat related to the last question that we discussed it. You said that you wanted to build and now you're building company that you never got, or the type of environment or a organization that you never experienced to get it. So being the employees or maybe the founders or aspiring entrepreneurs who are listening right now, um, what should they do right to make sure that the people who are coming in as the first team members or the initial team members, they feel like that the company that I've always aspired for, or the dream company, that the type of company that I've always visualized or imagined, maybe Miracle or Invocon, this is the company that the type of company that I always wanted to work in terms of the culture that the company provides, in terms of the overall environment, in terms of the learning opportunities, and potentially the future that the employee can see with the company.
Yeah, I think there are quite a few things, of course, that I think companies can do differently or better. I'm going to keep it to, let's say, the top three, four that come to my mind as the most important. I think one of the key things that I see companies often struggle with is saying versus doing.
Exactly.
They will say one thing, words that they use are on one direction, but the actions that actually are executed are not in the same direction for a variety of reasons. Now, the reasons don't matter because this mismatch is dangerous in the end for the employee-employer relationship. That trust is lost. Because if a company says one thing but does something else, then it's how do you believe what the company says? Simple, right?
Right.
I think, and it's hard because especially as a company grows larger, there is a need for internal communications and all of these things, right? But I think in the end, it needs to be aligned. Like you can't just say things just to please people and then act differently. They'll actually be more upset. For me, it's as simple as that. That's one thing. I think the second thing is, as you are building this trust also, like not only is the employee building trust during their probation period, of course, but it's all you are also building trust with the employee, and it's a key part of retention, that trust. And that trust is not just the fact that everything is fine and we are all friendly with each other, but also the fact that if something is wrong and if something is not going well, the employee can trust their boss or their team members to come and tell them and talk about it and have a conversation about it. So trust that the team has got their back, because it's not just talking sweetly in front of you, but also um, I think we lost the connection for a moment,
Yeah,
uh, but I
please.
think we are back.
Yeah, we are back.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so I think that trust is important to be built from both sides, from the employer side, um, by aligning words and actions, and on the employee side also, by sort of helping the employee also get feedback, like honest, brutal, not brutal in the sense ki disrespectful, but clear but kind feedback, especially constructive feedback, because this way that creates trust in the employee here. Okay, if I'm making a mistake, I'm not going to be fired, I'm going to be supported, and there are some chances that I have, let's say, to make mistakes. As long as the mistakes are not repeated, making mistakes is okay at Miracle.io. That's what we believe in. And as long as you're making new mistakes, it's a sign that you're progressing and moving forward. So I think it's a simple sort of thought process that we follow at Miracle.io. I think most companies don't want to admit that they're making mistakes or their founders are making mistakes, and therefore nobody should make mistakes. And it's a bit of sacred uh, sort of a situation that is created. So, but that's not healthy, is according to me.
Right.
And finally, I think if there's the pay aspect, right? So many people are often only optimizing for pay, and it's a fair way to live life, right? In the end, money does enable and unlock a lot of things. But in the end, like sometimes people are paid a lot, but then if the culture of the company is toxic, or there's a lot of internal politics, or all of these kind of things, then the employee starts questioning, yeah, is what I'm getting paid worth it as well? So in the end, you can throw money at the problem, yes, but only to a certain level. Like beyond a certain point, it doesn't help you any much more.
Another question clicked my mind on the last words that you spoke, and it's somewhat related to the tech startup ecosystem in India. Right? There are companies um, not positively known for building the work culture, and the companies they belong to the edtech sector. So you are directly engaged with the edtech sector, the K-12 or the school education, and we're working with the higher education. So what do you think? What went wrong in the first place for the edtech companies in India not able to build the customers trust, and also not able to build a strong employer brand, which in uh, could help means create a buzzword out there that this ABC company or this XYZ company is an epitome, or is something that all the freshers or maybe new people entering the job market, they should aspire for, that this is the company that we need to work on, that we need to work for. And actually what EdTech didn't do right. So these questions broadly, what's your take on that?
Mhm. Wow, that's a loaded question. I'm going to try to answer it because it's also many, many facets that I may know some parts of it and I may not know some parts of it. Um, so I think there are certain companies. So from a business perspective, right, from a marketing perspective, like there are multiple ways to do it. Like for example, Apple deliberately chooses to not talk at all about their competitors. As an example, when you upload an app on the Play Store and on the App Store, Apple App Store, And for whatever reason, if you have a design element that is from Android, for example, in your Apple um, iOS app, then when you get the review from the Apple customer developer relations person, the review at that level also, they will also say this your app contains elements that are from non-Apple ecosystems. They won't specify it's Android or other mobile. They will simply specify it this way. So they won't talk anything about the competition, right? Or the other parts of the ecosystem. I think some of these big players in edtech in India, they chose an approach, a marketing approach, where they chose to talk badly about the status quo, the school system, for example. So they went about demonizing the school system. Now, the school system has many challenges, has many flaws, no questions over there. But then, in order to rise up and sort of position themselves as more superior, they chose that approach. And now that is sort of coming back and biting them. And, I think that's one key misstep, perhaps, that was made. Now, again, I'm no branding and marketing expert myself, but I think a different approach maybe could have had a different outcome. Um, I think so. That's the perception in the general education sector, right? Now, employer branding wise, of course, your employees are not going to talk. Your employees are not going to talk well about you if you did not treat them well, right? And I'm sure there are some employees who proactively chose to burn bridges with you for whatever reason, even if you give them everything from your side. But by and large, if let's say out of 100 employees that you have, 90 or even 85 of them have good things to say about you even after they leave, it's generally a good signal, I would say. But if it's the other way around, that out of 185 actually have not so good things to say about you,
Right.
then that word spread, no matter how well you may have your blogs, employer branding blogs written, and everything else around. So I think it's just choosing to treat people like do unto others as you would like to do, as you would like others to do unto you,
Exactly.
is a simple sort of phenomenon. If I were the employee, how what would I prefer? And you may not be able to fulfill everything, but if you're actively making an effort to actually do it,
Hmm.
that employee leaves also
Absolutely.
with a good
Memories or
feeling.
feelings.
Yeah, exactly. I think these are two, three things that I think, if done differently in these larger techs, might have changed the game a bit for them, and could have left them with a bit more goodwill than there is right now.
Fantastic. So, this last question from my end. I have been very curious since I heard about you partnering with the government of Punjab. Apart from the governance or the administrative issue, or the even not considering the resources that the government schools have, uh, do you potentially find that the students of these government institutes, if given the right platform, like you are engaging or you have partnered with several schools in Punjab, these students, if given the right direction, if given the right resources in hand, um, means are they at par, means, or they have the potential to be at par with those from the high-end private schools in India?
I think from a potential perspective, I definitely see that there are enough gifted students in public schools. And of course, there are enough gifted students also in the private schools.
Hmm.
Now, the infrastructure of a private school, um, and the private schooling system is much, much better. Opportunities are better. The friend
Absolutely.
circle is different. So all of these things play a big part. And I think from again, I'm not a psychology expert myself, but this is what I've observed anecdotally at least, is that with kids from let's say a public school, they
Hmm.
also inherently have a bit of a inferiority complex, that hey, I didn't have the opportunities. They are aware of it also, that they didn't have the opportunities that maybe someone from a private school has had,
Right.
and that itself can come in the way at times, is what we've seen. So Having said that, we have quite a few people in our ambassador program. So our ambassador program is a very diverse program. So right from school, students from public schools in Sunam in Punjab,
Hmm.
to like Gopi Birla Memorial School in Mumbai, rich private school. So we have students from all of these different parts of the education ecosystem, because I think it's also important for students from both sides to see that how the reality is on the other side,
Right.
what they, how fortunate they are also, on one side, and on the other side, how many more things are there out there to explore also. And today, with the advent of the internet and AI and all of these things, many of these things are in their grasp as well. All they need is a mobile device, and data, right? Which now, with the infrastructure that we have in India, is becoming more and more feasible, accessible, and everything else around it. So with Punjab, I think we've worked with a few schools now. We are rolling out to a few more schools as well, slowly, steadily. What was funny for us was that how quickly the students picked up what we've built. So sometimes the teachers, we need to support them a bit more, as is expected, of course. But what was surprising to us was how quickly students are saying, "Yeah, dekh liya maine, ho kya kar liya. I have totally understood this. This is a great way of learning, and it's very easy to use." And you're like, wow, this one, Jasleen, her name is, she's from our ambassador program. So she just recently joined. And again, she speaks Hindi, is more comfortable in Hindi and Punjabi, of course. But she's not afraid. She will ask questions in her own way during the ambassador program, Hindi mein, even in English, in her own way. I think that's really something inspiring, that students who for the most of their life have been sort of maybe shy or underconfident, suddenly they are more confident, because they see, yeah, okay, sure, maybe I come from a different background, but here everyone is equal, and I'm able to see a bigger view than maybe I could have ever been able to see. So that's what the ambassador program is also about, to really help these gifted students sort of get more exposure and support them along the way, simply.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, thanks a lot, Omkar. It was great catching up with you. So, thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen, for listening out the entire podcast. And that was the second episode of the Big Brains, our podcast series on the future of work and the leaders, future leader, thought leaders, building up great um, teams and great organization right from scratch. So, with me here was Omkar Pimple, the co-founder and CEO of Miracle.io. He's working, for your context, he's working and building a mixed reality organization. He was joining me from Berlin, and the company is based out of Berlin and has strong operations in India. Thanks a lot, Omkar. Great catching up with you. Maybe next time you're in India, we'll catch up soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Taranjeet, for inviting me on the podcast and for the great conversation. I do enjoy talking about these topics a lot, and was great to catch up as well after so long, and hope to see you in person very, very soon.
Likewise. Thank you.